So we're going to start with the Cycladic peoples, and these are basically peoples on the Aegean Isles, on the islands in the Aegean Sea. We see major excavations that will occur around the turn of the 19th century, and a renewed interest will take place in the 1950s and 60s. Many of these sites will be plundered, and goods will be smuggled out. It's very, very common because you get people buying land that's been occupied by numerous other civilizations. They dig up the land. They look for artifacts, amongst other things. You also have Indiana Jones types who are going out and just grabbing pieces. And this is really early Bronze Age Greece at this point. We're about 3000 to 2000 BCE, so they're overlapping part of the Egyptian Old Kingdom. And their art is going to be heavily influence the Minoans and the Mycenaeans later on. They're also going to be influenced late in their culture, early in the Minoan and Mycenaean, by the Minoans and the Mycenaeans. And this culture is very into grave goods. In other words, items that are being buried with the dead, which we're going to see. And they're generally using marble for all of their sculpture. That's simply because it's readily available in their locations. And the first piece we're looking at is Figurine of a Woman, which is exactly what it sounds like. It's a figurine of a woman. And this is we find examples of these in graves as well as in settlements, and the size can range from a few inches to almost life size. In this case, the figure, and here's a slightly different example, but same idea. The figure is about 12 to 14 inches tall, so it is a sizable figure. It's comprised of simple geometric forms, as if they've abstracted the body, something we don't generally associate with ancient cultures, but that's quite literally what they've done. Look what they did with the face. It's basically more or less triangular with a nose in the middle. We know these are female figures because they have a prominent pubic triangle, which imitates the pubic hair, the pattern of pubic hair that is indicative of a female form. The toes, fingers, arms, and the back of the knees are generally just incised. They're just cut in, just like the pubic triangle. And you'll notice the toes are pointed. These are not figures that were meant to stand. These are figures that were meant to be laid down somewhere. But we don't actually know what they are, and there are a lot of examples of them, and these are just a few. We don't know if they're toys, sort of like a doll, although I could imagine that is the worst preschool doll you will ever get. Susie hit me, so I hit her with the doll, and it's not good. Don't give your kids big, heavy stone dolls. It's probably a bad idea. They could be fertility figures or goddesses, some part of a cult. Maybe it's a figure that you get for a woman to encourage pregnancy. It could be something that would be given to a farmer to increase their crop's fertility. It could have funerary associations. This could be a god or goddess, more than likely, that protects the dead. It could be some kind of Ka statue, or it could be part of a domestic cult, cult of the home. Whenever you hear domestic, it usually means the home. So it could be part of a domestic cult. Women having a different form of worship from the men. We're just not sure. Now, we also have another form that we see a lot of, and this is one example of that. This is the male lyre player. And male figures are also going to be quite common. Most are going to be depicted in a group or as elaborate musicians. The majority of them will be found in graves. And again, we see that simplified geometric form, this very... If I weren't telling you this is from ancient Greece, you might think this is abstract art from the 20th century. The shapes tend to echo one another. The question here is why? Because we have these different figures. They're always male, which indicates that musicians were generally male in Cycladic society. We find them generally in graves, which may tell us that they're there to entertain the deceased with eternal music. Or they could be musicians playing in honor of a deity, trying to bring some kind of good fortune to the dead in the afterlife. It's really unclear. And the problem we have with the Cycladic people is after them, we have the Greeks, we will have the Romans, we will have a number of other societies that come into play that are constantly destroying what was before them and building their own. So we don't have a lot of information on the Cycladic people as such.